Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights, outtake episode from last week's Hobby Hotline on with Samuel Evans and John Newman. We had lots of participation. Some of the commenters and questioners are recognized, but sometimes I edit pretty tightly. But this is just 13 minutes out of more than an hour where we're on talking about some topics as well as responding to the comments from the excellent audience we have there that is live. It's fun, unpredictable, some good questions. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, sponsors, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Hugs and Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, CompC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. Again, thanks, Samuel. Thanks, John. Enjoyed it. And here it is. Grading is very competitive, as everyone knows. PSA is making a lot of right moves. What they've done is they've tried to make it even more accessible, even easier, and safer, less changing hands. All those are good things because you can see they've done the GameStop thing. They're branched out internationally. So they're really focusing on those things. At any rate, the eBay thing, okay, it is safe, it's easy, it's accessible, but it's not that economical and it's not very relational. And I think there's a huge opportunity. The bulk subbers built PSA, the dealers. And so this is bypassing them. So those are the only two negatives, but it's inevitable that people want to work with eBay. And once it gets in the eBay system, they want to keep it there.
It can be risky. Pictures only can tell so much. Obviously, having a card in person in your hand to see the true condition of it is terrible. So I think I would do this.
Here's the problem. And the reason, Samuel, your point is well taken about the human capital, but I think eBay's too big. So say I buy a card from Samuel on eBay, and I trust him and everything like that. But if it's a raw card and I'm paying big bucks, then I'm guessing that I'm going to want to have a side deal with Samuel to say, you know what, I'm sending this direct to PSA. And if it comes back as 7, you got a deal. But if it comes back as a 6, I want a rebate or I want to cancel it because you told me this was near mint or whatever it is. And I can't see it, but I want a third-party judgment. Now, that's a relational element that's not going to be fun. So side deals, because you're buying a sight unseen, you might have some recourse. If, again, the authentication thing, I don't think they're judging the condition in the authentication step. I think that's more, is this a real card? Is it counterfeit? They send it to PSA and they find a bad blemish on the back that knocks down the technical grade, then you've got a 3-headed mess between eBay, PSA 4 with the buyer and the seller. So that's the relational element that could go awry. What Samuel's saying about the relational capital, to me, part of that is dealing with people that you know and like. You know them, you're friends with them, like at a card show. You're dealing with a person, you see a face, you can shake hands, you observe them in business. eBay, a little bit blind. You can't just say, hey, they got a lot of good feedback. You just don't know. And honest mistakes can be made. That's why card shows are cool and dealing with people that you know. Who wants to put expensive raw cards? We're mainly talking vintage, but vintage cards that are not graded and are expensive are suspect.
That's why I would never probably use this because it's just too many question marks for me as someone who grades. I always have the cards in hand. Cards in hand too. Dan Ryan asked, love to hear Dr. Jim's thoughts on how businesses in the hobby react during periods of high economic anxiety or how it impacts the left-wing point of view.
Basically, the way I break it down is full-time businesses versus part-time business. Any full-time business is nervous now. Part-time business are laughing all the way to the bank. It's a great, when the stock market's up, people have money. When the stock market's down, they spend money on cards and stuff because the stock market stinks. So if you're a side gig person, that's why the shows are real big now because people are thinking, hey, at least I can go flip some cards, trade some cards, buy some cards, sell some cards. But if you're a full-time business, those are the ones that are more impacted by the tariffs and the general malaise in the economy. But the side gig business gets hot when other things are bad. So the Dallas show, last show was one of the best ever. The next one might be even better.
Different hobby entities addressing the tariff. A few have basically come out and said until anything reversed, prices will go up on products, unfortunately. How big of a hit might this be? You got to buy supply. Maybe they cost more. I know tariff is not a thing, but to not maybe to the percentages we're seeing. Do you think maybe a little overblown or not necessarily?
It's a presidential jousting with other nations, and there'll be a resolution, but the resolution probably will be not going back to the way it was. There'll be some level of tariffs. Trump is claiming they're reciprocal. But one of the pivotal points in our hobby was when the prices went way up. In fact, several times when prices have gone up, it's not bad for the hobby. In 89, Upper Deck came in and just, people say, oh, I can't believe it. They're going to be $1 a pack or 89 cents a pack. But did the industry grow through that? Yeah. When prices go up and even costs go up, it's not a problem. The 03-04 basketball Upper Deck Exquisite, that was unprecedented. Higher prices are not necessarily bad news in the hobby. Higher costs even, because it's a hobby. Ultimately, people want the cards. And many of these products are going above SRP anyway. So if the SRP goes up, maybe that means there's not as much run up beyond that. I just think the ecosystem finds a way to look for the inefficiencies and the opportunities there. And it's so diverse. I won't say it's much ado about nothing because some of these tariffs are really significant. But when it all gets done, we're going to be working with Canada for sure. China may be another story, but China's not the only part of Asia. You got Japan, which is a huge hotbed. The Europeans, UK, I think those things are going to get worked out. But it may be difficult here for the next weeks or months, which is just wreaking havoc with the stock market, which further makes people nervous. But it's got to be resolved.
Giving too much credit for people being rational. Gordon Peg says the respectfully higher prices discourage people from buying more.
Not necessarily. It wasn't higher prices that made people leave. They left because the prices were too low because of junk wax. It's counter-instinctual. High prices bring people in. Low prices send them away. These cards aren't worth anything. Now they're going to be worth even more. Now, again, you're just used to paying X, and now you're going to pay 110% of X, and you've had choice to either to do it or not do it. Again, there's no tariff on the cards you're holding in your hand. What you already have. The hobby is 90% what is already existing.
That's already here and doesn't have to be necessarily shipped internationally. If people really want to stay active in the hobby, they find a way. There's different ways to hobby. Whatever aspect you're in, there's ways to stay active and just adapt no matter what the economic situation. Pepino Man says, as a collector, I disagree with lower prices driving people away. Pepino Man says, Dr. Jim, I respectfully disagree. I get if you're someone that's just in it for the dollar sign, yeah, I'm sure lower prices are deflating to you. Gordon Pang says it depends on how long this nonsense lasts. For most of us, after all, cards are about disposable income. I'm going to be spending less if it's going to be a while. Yeah, this stuff impacts people. Another one. When the cost of necessities goes up, money available for the hobby goes down. From Hoover, Word says, COVID really had an explosion effect on the hobby, watching vintage slowly come back down as expected. And I like it because as a vintage guy, I've been able to buy at a little less prices. I don't always like lower prices when it comes to selling.
It's just not all about disposable income. Cards are currency. So if times are bad, it's, I don't have any money to buy cards. Wait a minute. I got a bunch of cards I can sell. I can trade. I can do lots of things. In fact, some of the cards that you would sell are instant money if you've got the right stuff. So it's not about, hey, I just keep buying and buying and I never sell. Those kind of people, if they never sell and they just keep buying, now if they're buying individual cards and they have some sense of purpose, but if they're buying into breaks, buying unopened wax, they're going to have to sell some stuff. And that's part of what's happening at Chantilly. It's not just people coming in with wallets and I want to spend some money. Now they're bringing in cards to trade, cards to sell. It's a whole ecosystem. And there's probably more selling going on and more willingness to sell when times are uncertain.
Abel says, with the stock market, could that lead to some people parking money in cards? I think that happens. Whether you do it for that reason, that's up to you. But cards are a commodity, and we all own some that are very liquid, right? If we needed some money, we could sell the cards rather quickly.
90+% of the hobby, is commodity. But the 10% of cards that are not a commodity, that are really hard to find, that are on the floor of Chantilly right now, many of them, sometimes that's better than cash. Commodity cards are not bad because when times are good, there's a lot of liquidity, a lot of people are interested, and there's a lot of action there. But the junk wax era, the commodities were recognized as being too many out there. And then the price dropped. People went around in those days saying, hey, will you buy my cards? They said, no, we're not buying your 92 Fleer. So the lack of liquidity, and we don't have that now. The ebb and flow, John, is healthy. There have to be some cards that are commodities that are available to kids and people with less money. And there's always going to be the high end that's frequently driving the headlines. And those are going strong.
Our next topic, that's players active and retired buying into or becoming owners of LCSs. Brady's bought into the Card Store Card Vault, but they're expanding their reach with new locations, including right near MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. J.J. Hoover, former Cincinnati Reds pitcher, just opened up his store near Cincinnati in Alexandria, Kentucky. Is this good or bad for the hobby? If it's rusty for the money, that would probably bother me a little bit more. But that's their business. In Tom Brady's case, listen, he doesn't need to invest in Card Vault because he needs another payday. Now he's doing broadcasting that pays him. It's not like he's just a silent partner. Yeah, you can use my name, but I won't be there. Just say Tom Brady's involved. But you can't argue with the greatness that he is.
The key is not owning. The key is managing. If it's a passive ownership where you show up every once in a while, you're not in that business. You're just a part owner. And Tom Brady, I'm not sure he invested money. They may have come to him and say, look, we're going to give you 50% of this business because we think you're going to double it overnight because of the power of your name. And part of the deal is you've got to come once a month, whatever. But he's not going to be actively managing the business. Therefore, he doesn't really have to know that much about the business other than be himself. I hope it works out great. But having a hobby shop is hard. You've done it, John, I know. I've done it. It's not easy, especially if you're selling singles. Selling wax, not a big deal. Selling singles, sorting cards, getting things ready for the customers is difficult. Most of the new stores I see, like the Card Vault, is heavy on the unopened and appearances and things like that, probably breaks, a digital component, all that stuff. I hope it works financially, but J.J. Hoover is more the person to look at of somebody that's probably going to be actively in the store. Now, if that happens a lot, that's great. That's validation.
Great point. There's a difference from a store owner who unlocks the door, comes in and runs the store, than someone that attaches their name on it, like Tom Brady.
John, you were a store owner and probably manager too, and I was probably a co-manager at best in the very early days. But rent is a big portion of the expenses because the labor, if you're the manager, you're drawing from that, but your rent is a big expense, and it's way more if you're in proximity to the stadium or a lot of foot traffic. Rex said, you want the right kind of foot traffic. Yeah, they're sports fans, but I think they need to try. It's greater visibility for the hobby, but it's not a recipe for success necessarily to jack up your rent. The other thing I was going to say, John, did you have any silent partners when you were at your store where you had to give them half your profits when you did all the work?
No, I wouldn't.
I'm saying, yeah. So I'm just saying it's tricky, but it's worth giving it a try, and I hope it works.
The